I was halfway through my second bourbon when Margaret's name lit up my phone. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. My sister never called after 9 unless something was wrong. "Will?" Her voice came through thin and shaky. "Can you come over?" I set down my glass. "What happened?" I need to talk to someone, please." 20 minutes later, I was standing in her kitchen in Elbow Park, watching her stare at a half-empty bottle of wine like it held answers. Margaret looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders curved inward like she was protecting her chest from a blow, eyes red-rimmed, mascara smudged on one cheek. She'd been crying for hours, maybe days. "Derek texted me today," she said finally. My jaw tightened. Derek, the ex-husband who'd drained $40,000 from her accounts during their divorce 3 years ago, all while playing the victim so well that Margaret actually felt guilty about leaving him. What did he want? To congratulate me. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He saw on Facebook that I'm doing Natasha's coaching program. Said he's proud of me for finally investing in myself. I moved the wine bottle out of her reach. "Tell me about this coaching program." That's when the whole story came out. Natasha Morrison, the Women's Empowerment Circle, weekend retreats at Lake Louise, the promise of financial freedom and finding your authentic self. And the money. $85,000 from the trust fund. The one Sarah left for both of us before the cancer took her 2 years ago. Sarah, my wife, Margaret's best friend. On her last coherent day, Sarah had gripped my hand and made me promise, "Take care of Maggie. Don't let her settle for less. Don't let anyone hurt her again." I'd failed once already with Derek. I'd seen the warning signs, the isolation, the guilt trips, the constant need for just a little help with his failed ventures. But I'd only warned Margaret once, and when she didn't listen, I'd backed off, respected her autonomy, stayed quiet. By the time the divorce was final, Derek had convinced Margaret she was the problem, that she was selfish for wanting separate bank accounts, that her family was poisoning her against him. I wasn't staying quiet this time. "Walk me through it," I said. From the beginning. Margaret met Natasha Morrison 6 months ago at a charity gala. The coaching program started small, $200 for a weekend workshop, then $500 monthly, then $5,000 for the inner circle where the real transformation happened. Then came the investments. Natasha's business partner, James Patterson, ran a wealth management firm. He'd made Circle members incredible returns, 20, 30% annually. The trust fund was just sitting there, Margaret said. Natasha said Sarah would want me to use it to build a real life. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Where's the money now?" "James has it, in a managed portfolio." She pulled out her phone and showed me an email. "Natasha's been helping me with something else too. She thinks I should refinance the house. The one our parents left us, worth at least $650,000. Margaret lived there alone now. She showed me the document, power of attorney, already filled out with Natasha Morrison's name listed as attorney-in-fact for financial decisions and real estate transactions. I took a long breath and counted to 5. Getting angry wouldn't help. "Has anyone else refinanced their house?" I asked carefully. "Patricia did. Patricia Chen, she's a doctor. She used the equity to invest more with James. She's retiring next year at 52. I filed that away. "I'd like to meet Natasha. Can you introduce us?" Margaret's face lit up, the first genuine smile all night. "Really? There's a workshop Thursday at 2. You'd come? I want to understand what's helping you so much." What I really wanted was to look Natasha Morrison in the eye and see what I was dealing with. She hugged me, and I could feel how thin she'd gotten. "Thank you for not judging me, Will." I drove home slowly, my mind already working through the problem. $85,000, a power of attorney, a house refinance. Every instinct I had honed from 15 years in corporate risk assessment, was screaming that this was a scam. But Margaret couldn't see it. She was too invested, financially and emotionally. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the darkness. Through my living room window, I could see the photo on the mantel, Sarah and Margaret at the lake, laughing. "I'm not letting this happen," I said to the empty car. "Not this time." The next morning, I did what I do best: research. My background is in corporate risk assessment. I investigate potential business partners for acquisition deals, looking for red flags in financial statements and background checks. It teaches you to spot patterns, to trust your instincts when the numbers don't add up. Natasha Morrison had a limited digital footprint for someone running a successful coaching business. Her website was professional but vague. No business registration number. No client testimonials with full names. Her LinkedIn said she'd founded the Women's Empowerment Circle 3 years ago in Calgary. Before that, sparse work history in Vancouver and Toronto. Nothing concrete. James Patterson was easier to find. Patterson Wealth Management had the right certifications, professional website, even articles in local business publications. But the firm had only existed for 2 years. Before that, James Patterson had no financial industry history. His certifications were recent, completed in a compressed time frame 18 months ago. I pulled up the Alberta Securities Commission database. Patterson's firm was registered, but there were no public filings about their investment strategy or returns. That wasn't illegal for a small private firm, but it was unusual for someone claiming 30% annual returns. I called Marcus Chen. We'd worked together on an embezzlement case 3 years ago. "Will Harrison, how long has it been?" "Too long. Marcus, I need a favor. Off the record for now." I outlined what I knew: the coaching program, the investment returns, the $85,000 from Margaret, the power of attorney. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Classic affinity scam. Build trust through group identity. Create urgency. Isolate them from outside perspectives. That's what I thought. The investment angle is clever, though. If they're taking money under the guise of wealth management, that's securities fraud. We can work with that. He paused. "But Will, if this is what it looks like, your sister isn't the only victim. And the money? It's probably already gone." My hand tightened on the phone. "I understand. Give me a couple days. I'll see what I can find." That afternoon, I drove to Patricia Chen's address in Britannia. Beautiful old house with mature trees and a view of the reservoir. A for sale sign stood in the front yard. She answered in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, looking exhausted. When I introduced myself as Margaret's brother, her expression shifted. Recognition, then fear. "Does Margaret know you're here?" "No, but I think you know why I'm here anyway." She studied me, then stepped back. "You'd better come in." The house was mostly empty. Boxes lined the hallway. The living room walls were bare, rectangles of darker paint showing where pictures had hung. "I'm selling it," Patricia said flatly. "I don't have a choice." "Natasha's investments?" She laughed bitterly. "Is that what she's calling them now?" She sat heavily. "How much has Margaret given her?" $85,000, and Natasha's pushing her to refinance the house. Patricia closed her eyes. "Tell her not to. Please, tell her whatever you have to." "I'm trying." But she trusts Natasha completely. We all did. Patricia's voice cracked. "She's so good at it, making you feel seen, special, like she's the only one who understands what you've been through." "Tell me how it works." The Women's Empowerment Circle wasn't just coaching. It was a complete ecosystem. Weekly meetings, daily group chats, retreats every few months. Natasha had cultivated an environment where questioning her was seen as sabotaging your own growth. If you expressed doubts, the other women would love bomb you until you fell back in line, Patricia explained. And if that didn't work, Natasha would schedule a private session where she'd remind you of all your failures, Then she'd position herself as the only solution. The investment scheme came later, after emotional dependence was established. James would give presentations about financial freedom, show statements with incredible returns, 25, 30%. He said it was proprietary trading strategies that only worked at certain scales, which is why he only took clients through Natasha's referrals. Did you see the actual investments? Monthly statements. They looked legitimate. She showed me a PDF on her phone. Professional design, full of financial jargon, proper disclaimers. Did you ever withdraw money? For the first year, yes. Small amounts. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. The money always appeared within 48 hours. That's how I knew it was real. Classic. Give back small amounts to build trust, then go for the big score. How much total? $240,000. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I refinanced this house, cashed out my retirement fund, even borrowed from my parents. James said we were on the verge of a major breakthrough, some tech investment that would triple our money. When did you realize something was wrong? 3 months ago. James stopped responding. Monthly statements stopped. I tried to withdraw money from my mortgage, and suddenly there were excuses. Funds temporarily locked, available next month. Next month became the month after. Did you go to the police? I tried, but I don't have real evidence. Just statements James could claim are fake. She looked up with hollow eyes. The worst part? Natasha convinced me not to tell my family about the investments, said they wouldn't understand. So now I'm losing my house and can't even explain why. I felt cold rage building. This wasn't just theft. It was systematic psychological destruction. Will you help me stop them? Patricia looked at me for a long moment. What can you possibly do? I'm going to get evidence, real evidence, the kind that puts them in prison. She pulled out a notebook. After I realized what was happening, I documented her manipulation techniques. I thought maybe it would help somehow. Inside were pages of notes, Natasha's common phrases, questions she asked to identify vulnerabilities, how she'd escalate commitment gradually. It was a playbook, a systematic guide to destroying someone's judgment. She studied this, I said. She's done it before. There was a woman at an early retreat, Diane something. She disappeared after a few months. When I asked, Natasha got angry, said Diane wasn't ready to do the work. Do you remember her last name? No, but she was from Vancouver. A therapist, I think. Vancouver, where Natasha had been before Calgary. That night, I spent hours searching for therapists named Diane in Vancouver. Around midnight, I found her. Diane Foster, licensed clinical counselor. I sent an email explaining who I was and asking if she'd talk about Natasha Morrison. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Mr. Harrison? The voice was cautious. Is your sister okay? The urgency told me everything. She knew exactly what Natasha was capable of. Not really. She's about to lose everything. Diane was quiet for a moment. Tell me what's happening. I outlined everything. When I finished, Diane let out a shaky breath. It's the same playbook, exactly the same. 2 years ago, Diane had been going through a divorce. A friend invited her to one of Natasha's workshops in Vancouver, then called the Phoenix Circle. At first, it was wonderful. Natasha was insightful, supportive. Diane joined the inner circle, attended every retreat, trusted her completely. About 4 months in, her business partner, a British guy named Michael Shaw, convinced 6 of us to invest in a real estate development fund, said we'd double our money in a year. How much did you invest? 40,000, half my savings. Her voice hardened. When I tried to withdraw 6 months later, Michael had disappeared. The development fund didn't exist. The bank statements were fake. What did Natasha say? That she'd been betrayed too. That Michael had fooled both of us. She cried, apologized. offered to refund my coaching fees. She was so convincing I actually felt sorry for her. But you didn't believe her. Not after I found 3 other women in Victoria who'd been through the exact same thing 2 years before that. Different business partner, different program name, same scam. That's when I realized she was the architect. Did you go to the police? Yes, but without hard evidence, there wasn't much they could do. Natasha had covered her tracks. The partnership agreements made it look like Michael was the financial controller. The women who invested had signed risk acknowledgement documents, legally ambiguous enough that no prosecutor wanted to touch it. What happened to Michael Shaw? Vanished, probably in Europe. She paused. The worst part was watching other women defend her. Even after I showed them the pattern, half refused to believe Natasha was involved. They'd been so manipulated, they'd rather believe they'd been stupid than believe she'd betrayed them. That was Margaret right now. How did you get them to see the truth? I didn't. Most never did. But one woman only accepted reality when Natasha disappeared. Just packed up and moved to Calgary without warning. Calgary, where Natasha had reinvented herself again. I'm going to stop her, I said, but I need evidence that will hold up in court. Then you need to catch her admitting it, on tape, with witnesses. Diane's voice was firm. And Mr. Harrison, be careful. If Natasha suspects you're investigating, she'll turn everyone against you. She'll make you the villain. Your sister will believe her. The next morning, Marcus called. I pulled records on Patterson Wealth Management. The firm has filed 0 trading records with the Securities Commission. For a firm claiming to manage millions in active investments, that's a giant red flag. Could they operate without reporting? Technically, for certain private funds, yes. But the returns they're claiming, the volume of clients, they should have triggered mandatory disclosure months ago. So either they're not actually investing the money, or they're running a Ponzi scheme, taking new money to pay off old investors while pocketing the rest. Marcus got a warrant to examine Patterson's bank accounts. We'll execute it Saturday morning. But we need victims to come forward. We need to prove intent to defraud. Even with all that, it's months of work. Margaret's going to sign over her house before then. Then you need to stop her, whatever it takes. And if that pushes her away, then you'll lose her either way. At least this way she keeps her house. He was right, but I needed a different approach. I needed to make Margaret see the truth herself, which meant getting closer to Natasha, close enough to catch her in the act. I texted Margaret, I'd love to meet your coach. When's the next circle event? Her response came immediately. Really? Thursday workshop at 2 p.m. I'll text Natasha you're coming. Thank you, Will. Thursday. 2 days to prepare. The workshop was held at a boutique hotel in Kensington. Margaret met me in the lobby, practically vibrating with excitement. You're going to love Natasha. The room was set up like a high-end corporate retreat. Comfortable chairs in a circle, name tags, organic snacks and kombucha, about 15 women chatting in small groups. Then I saw her. Natasha Morrison stood at the front, tall and polished in expensive casual clothes, late 30s, magnetic presence. When she saw Margaret, her face lit up. Maggie. She crossed the room and hugged Margaret, then turned to me with intense eye contact. You must be Will. Margaret talks about you constantly. Her handshake was firm. She said you were skeptical, which I totally respect. The best brother would be skeptical. It means you care. Smart. Immediately positioning my skepticism as proof of love rather than threat. I wanted to see what's been helping her so much, I said carefully. Then you're in the right place. The workshop was impressive. Natasha was an expert facilitator. She started with vulnerability, sharing her own divorce story, financial struggles, rebuilding her life. Then she guided exercises about identifying limiting beliefs and rewriting narratives. Nothing overtly wrong. She talked about self-worth, not letting past failures define you, taking control of your financial future. If you didn't know the agenda underneath, it would seem helpful. But I watched the techniques. How she isolated dissenters. When one woman expressed uncertainty, Natasha asked gentle questions that made her doubt herself, then invited the group to share how the exercise had helped them. Within minutes, the uncertain woman was apologizing. How she built financial anxiety. How many of you are afraid you'll end up desperate and dependent? Most hands went up. How many have a real plan to ensure that never happens? Hands went down. This is why we need radical action. Playing it safe is the riskiest thing you can do. How she positioned herself as the only solution. Your friends won't get it. Your family won't support you. They're operating from scarcity mindset. But in this circle, we understand. I watched. Margaret nodding along, shooting grateful glances at Natasha. Halfway through, there was a break. When I returned from the bathroom, I heard voices from a side hallway. Another 50,000, easy. A man's voice, British accent. She's got the equity. Don't push too hard, Natasha. Margaret's brother is here. He's protective. Worried? No, just careful. The protective ones usually back off once they see their sister happy. Give it a few weeks. And if he doesn't, then we accelerate the timeline. I stepped back before they could see me, heart pounding. That had to be James Patterson. They were talking about Margaret's house. When I returned to the main room, James was there. Mid-40s, expensive suit, perfectly styled hair. He was setting up a laptop at the front. Everyone, Natasha called out, I want you to meet James Patterson. He's going to talk about financial freedom and making your money work for you. James's presentation was polished. He talked about compound interest, aggressive investment strategies, how traditional financial advisors were too conservative. He showed graphs, his clients averaging 28% annually, while the market averaged 7%. The reason most people never achieve financial freedom, he said, is fear. They listen to conventional wisdom instead of taking calculated risks. My clients are willing to think differently. One woman raised her hand. My financial advisor says those returns aren't sustainable. James smiled. Because they're operating with traditional strategies. What I do is different. I identify opportunities before they hit mainstream, but it only works at certain scales, which is why I'm selective about clients, making it sound exclusive, desirable. I'm about to close a significant tech investment, he continued. Ground floor opportunity that could triple your principal in 18 months, but I need to close the round by end of next week. Create urgency. Classic pressure tactic. After the presentation, several women crowded around James. I watched him work, making it sound like he was doing them a favor, casually mentioning clients who'd retired early. Margaret was in that crowd, starry-eyed, eager. Natasha appeared at my elbow. What did you think? I turned to face her. Up close, I could see calculation behind her warm smile. She was assessing me. Impressive, though those returns seem unusually high. James is unusually talented, but I understand the skepticism. I had it too at first. She tilted her head. Margaret says you work in risk assessment? Corporate due diligence, mostly. Then you know all growth involves risk. The question is whether you're willing to take smart risks or let fear keep you small. Pleasant tone, but an edge underneath. Margaret's been held back by fear for so long. It's beautiful watching her finally step into her power. By investing her trust fund? By investing in herself. The money is just a tool. She placed a hand on my arm. I know it's hard watching someone you love make bold choices, especially after what happened with Derek. You're afraid she'll get hurt again. Deliberate mention of Derek, showing she knew our history, knew my vulnerabilities. But Margaret isn't the same woman who married Derek, Natasha continued. She's stronger now. And she has people who actually support her growth, not hold her back. The subtle implication that questioning her was like Derek's control, that I was the one who might hurt Margaret. I just want her to be happy, I said. We all do. She squeezed my arm. I'm so glad you came today, Will. It takes a big man to admit he might be wrong. She walked away, leaving me with that calibrated mix of praise and manipulation. After the workshop, Margaret was glowing. What did you think? Interesting. Can we grab coffee? Actually, James asked if I could stay. He wants to talk about the tech investment. She was practically bouncing. But dinner tonight? I watched her head toward James, everything in me wanting to grab her and leave, but I forced myself to walk out. In my car, I called Marcus. I heard James talking. They're pushing Margaret to invest more. Probably the house refinance money. They're planning to accelerate their timeline. Did you record it? No? Wasn't close enough. Then it's hearsay. We need hard evidence. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel. There has to be a way. There is, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. Someone needs to wear a wire. Get Natasha or James to explicitly discuss the fraud. Get them to admit the returns are fake or that they're planning to steal the money, anything proving criminal intent. They already know I'm skeptical. So change your tune. Tell them Margaret convinced you, that you're interested in investing too. You're a businessman. You've got money. They'll want you. I thought about spending more time with Natasha, pretending to fall for her manipulation, about lying to Margaret even more, about Sarah, and the promise I'd made. Set it up, I said. Whatever you need me to do. Marcus met me Friday morning in a parking garage. He handed me a small device that looked like a battery pack. This is the wire. Recording quality is excellent. Keep it in your jacket pocket, clipped here. He showed me the attachment. Press and hold 3 seconds to start, once to stop. What do I need to get? Clear admission of fraud. Them acknowledging investments are fake, or explicit discussion of past victims. Vague statements won't hold up. What if James has already moved the money offshore? Then we freeze what we can find and hope to trace transactions. But honestly, recovery odds are low. This is more about stopping them from hurting anyone else. And getting them prison time. Marcus studied me. You're angry. Wouldn't you be? Yeah, but anger makes you sloppy. Stay cold. Stay analytical. The moment Natasha sees emotion, she'll use it against you. He handed me a folder. Financial records I could pull on Patterson Wealth Management. 3 bank accounts. Total holdings, $280,000. I flipped through statements. That's it? That's it. If they're managing investments for even 10 clients at Patricia's amounts, there should be millions. Either they're using accounts we can't find or the money's already gone. Most likely a Ponzi scheme, taking new money to pay early investors, pocketing the rest. When it gets too big to sustain, they disappear with whatever's left. How long before they run? Hard to say, but if they're pressuring Margaret to refinance by next week, I'd guess they're preparing for an exit, one last big score, then gone. Which meant I had days, not just to get a confession, but to stop them from vanishing with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Margaret had arranged lunch with James for that afternoon. I arrived early and activated the wire. James and Margaret showed up together, both in good spirits. Margaret wore new designer clothes. I wondered how much of the trust fund had gone to maintaining the appearance of success. Will, James shook my hand. Firm grip, confident smile. Margaret tells me you're interested in learning more about what we do. She's been enthusiastic. I figured I should understand it. Over appetizers, James walked me through his investment philosophy. Smooth, mixing just enough real financial terminology with vague promises, proprietary algorithms, connections in private markets, the importance of moving quickly. The tech investment I mentioned, he said, is an AI company with a breakthrough in natural language processing. They're pre-IPO, taking limited investment from strategic partners. Normal minimum is $5 million, but because of my relationship with the founders, I can get smaller investors in at $200,000. $200,000. More than most people had liquid. Less than the equity in Margaret's house. That's significant, I said carefully. It is, but consider the upside. They're projecting IPO in 18 months at 12 times current valuation. Invest $200 now. See returns of $2 million plus. If the IPO happens, it will. I've seen the technology. He leaned forward. Look, I get the skepticism. I'm selective about clients because I need people who see opportunities, not obstacles. Margaret sees it. Patricia Chen sees it. The question is whether you do. Using Patricia's name. Social proof. How has Patricia's portfolio performed? She's up 32% year over year. Actually, one of my star clients. Recently made a significant additional investment. Recently. The house refinance that had pushed Patricia into ruin. I'd like to see more documentation, I said. Investment prospectus, your firm's trading history, client references. James's smile tightened slightly. Of course, though I should mention, the round closes next Friday. If you want in, we need to move quickly. I understand, but I don't invest $200,000 without proper due diligence. Absolutely. Why don't we meet tomorrow morning? I can show you everything at my office. He pulled out his phone. 9 a.m. work? Perfect. Alone at his office, where he might say something incriminating. That works. Saturday morning, I walked into Patterson Wealth Management's sleek downtown office. James greeted me with coffee and led me to a conference room covered with documents, investment prospectuses, trading records, client testimonials. All professionally produced, all probably fake. I activated the wire and sat down. James slid over a bound presentation. This is Prometheus AI. They're developing next-generation language models. Current valuation $40 million, projected to reach $400 million at IPO. I flipped through it. Detailed technical specifications, market analysis, projected revenues. If I didn't know better, I'd be impressed. Who else is investing? Can't reveal other investors due to confidentiality, but several Silicon Valley firms are in the round. Which firms? Again, confidential, but I can arrange a call with the founders. Always vague, always keeping me from verifying anything concrete. I pulled out my research. I looked into Patterson Wealth Management's filing history with the Alberta Securities Commission. James's smile didn't falter. And? You haven't filed any trading reports. For a firm managing active investments, that's unusual. We operate as a private investment vehicle. The reporting requirements are different. Not when you're claiming returns like these. I tapped the records. 28% annually? That should trigger mandatory disclosure. The regulations have gray areas for firms under certain asset thresholds. What's your current assets under management? That's confidential client information. I leaned forward. James, I'm seeing red flags, no public filings, vague strategies, returns that seem too good to be true. I understand your caution, but let me ask you something. Do you know a man named Michael Shaw? James blinked. Who? Michael Shaw, British investor, worked in Vancouver around 2021, ran a real estate development fund that turned out to be fraudulent. I don't see what that has to do with... He was Natasha Morrison's business partner, just like you are now. The color drained from his face. What are you saying? I'm saying Natasha has run this exact scam before, at least twice. Different cities, different partners, same structure. Coaching program builds trust, business partner takes investments, then both disappear with the money. That's ridiculous. Natasha introduced me to these opportunities. She's not... He stopped, expression shifting from defensive to uncertain. Wait, Michael Shaw? You've heard of him. Natasha mentioned a former business partner who'd stolen from clients. She said she'd been devastated, learned to be more careful about who she worked with. His voice went quiet. She said his name was Michael. I could see him processing it, pieces clicking into place. How much money are you currently holding for clients? I asked. I'd have to check exact numbers. Ballpark. Maybe 3 million across all accounts. I pulled out Marcus's bank statements. According to Securities Commission records, your firm's accounts hold $280,000. Where's the rest? James grabbed the papers, stared at them. A bead of sweat ran down his temple despite the air conditioning. This can't be right. When was the last time you personally verified the investment accounts? I get monthly statements from our custodial bank. Can you access those accounts directly? Natasha handles the banking relationships. I focus on client management and investment selection. His hand shook as he set down the papers. Perfect cover. Natasha had set him up as the front man while she controlled the actual money. James. I kept my voice level. I think you've been set up. I think Natasha is using you to run a Ponzi scheme, and when it collapses, you'll be the one who takes the fall. He was shaking now. I need to call the bank. Do it now, while I'm here. He pulled out his phone with trembling hands. I could hear the conversation, him asking about account balances, his voice getting tighter with each response. When he hung up, his face was ashen. The main investment account, the one that should have nearly $3 million, it has $48,000. There it was. The monthly statements you've been getting? They must be fake. He looked up with desperation. Oh my God, Patricia Chen just invested $240,000. Margaret just gave us $85,000. Your sister. Where did that money go? Offshore accounts, probably. Natasha's done this before. She'll have everything hidden. James stood abruptly, pacing. I need to talk to her. If you warn her, she'll disappear. The money will be gone forever, and you'll be left holding the bag for fraud charges. He stopped. Fraud charges? You're the registered investment advisor. Your name is on all the paperwork. Even if you didn't know, you're legally liable. But I didn't. I thought... He ran hands through his hair. Jesus Christ, I'm going to prison. Probably. But for a lot less time than if you run or destroy evidence. I paused. You cooperate. You give the police everything. You help them build a case against Natasha. Maybe the prosecutor will be lenient because you were a victim too. He sank back into his chair. For a long moment, silence. Then, I have everything. Every email, every document, every client file. It's all in the cloud. He pulled his laptop over. For the next hour, I watched him compile evidence. Emails from Natasha with instructions on what to tell clients. Bank transfers showing money moving from client accounts into shell companies. Fake monthly statements Natasha had created. It was all there. The entire scam, documented. Send everything to this email, I said, giving him Marcus's contact. Then call this number. Detective Marcus Chen, Fraud Division. Tell him everything. James looked at the number for a long moment. His career was over, his reputation destroyed. He was facing prison. All because he'd trusted the wrong person. I really thought I was helping people, he said quietly. Natasha kept telling me how talented I was. I thought I was good at this. You were manipulated. There's a difference. Is there? He looked up. Margaret trusted me. Patricia trusted me. How many people did I hurt? I didn't have an answer. James called Marcus. I listened to him explain everything, voice dull with shock. Sunday morning, Marcus called me at 7 a.m. We've got a problem. Natasha Morrison is gone. Her apartment's cleared out. Building manager says she gave notice 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. She'd been planning her exit before I even started investigating. What about the money? We froze the $280,000 in Patterson's accounts, but she moved everything else offshore. Cayman Islands, Singapore. It'll take months to trace. So she's gone, with all the money. We'll find her eventually. Interpol's been notified. But yeah, for now, she's in the wind. I sat on the edge of my bed. What do I tell Margaret? The truth. I called her. Can you come to my house? We need to talk. I can't. I'm at the lodge. Her voice was bright. It's graduation day for the circle. Natasha's doing this whole ceremony. You should come. The lodge, Lake Louise. Margaret, you need to leave, right now. What? Why? Natasha's a fraud. The investments are fake. James confirmed everything yesterday. The police are looking for her. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? I've been investigating her all week. She's run this scam 3 times before. She's stolen over $1 million. The money you invested with James, it's gone. No. Her voice was small. No, you're wrong. James didn't know. Natasha was using him. But I saw the bank records, Maggie. Your $85,000 is gone. I could hear her breathing, sharp and panicked. You're lying. You never wanted me to do this. You've been trying to sabotage. Margaret, listen to me. No, you're just like Derek. You want to control me. This isn't about control. Natasha isn't even her real name. She's done this in Vancouver and Victoria. She finds vulnerable women and steals everything. Why are you doing this? She was crying. Why can't you just let me be happy? Because you're not safe. Maggie, please get in your car and... I'm hanging up. Don't call me again. The line went dead. I grabbed my keys and drove. 2 hours to Lake Louise, hands tight on the wheel. When I arrived, the ceremony was in the great room. Natasha at the front in an elegant white suit, speaking to 40 well-dressed women. Margaret sat in the 3rd row, looking shell-shocked. Natasha saw me immediately. Her expression flickered, then smoothed into a welcoming smile. Will, how appropriate that you're here. You're under arrest. 2 RCMP officers strode in behind me. Natasha Morrison, you're under arrest for fraud, theft over $5,000, and money laundering. The room erupted, women gasping, some rushing forward. Natasha raised her hands, perfectly calm. There's been a misunderstanding. Officers, perhaps we could discuss this privately. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. Natasha's mask slipped. Just for a second, I saw pure calculation, measuring distances, exits, odds. Then it was gone, replaced by confused innocence. That's when Patricia stepped into the room from the hallway, flanked by 2 other women I didn't recognize. It's true, Patricia said quietly. I'm Dr. Patricia Chen. I was part of the circle. I invested $240,000 that Natasha and James stole. I'm losing my house. I lost $60,000, one of the other women said. $85,000, the second added. The room went silent, reality spreading across faces, doubt, fear, horrible understanding. The officers handcuffed Natasha. As they led her past me, she leaned in and whispered, "The money's gone. You'll never find it." I don't care about the money, I said. I care that you can't hurt anyone else. She smiled then, cold and real. There's always someone else, Will. Then she was gone. 6 months later, I stood at Sarah's grave with Margaret beside me, both holding flowers. The hearing had been that morning. Natasha, real name Natalie Murphy, got 4.5 years in federal prison. James got 3 years in deportation to the UK. They'd recovered $340,000. Margaret would get $20,400 back. Not nothing, but nowhere near what she'd lost. Margaret set her flowers on Sarah's grave. She would have been proud of you. I don't know about that. I do. You kept your promise. She looked at me. I've been seeing a therapist. Dr. Foster, Diane. She reached out after the arrest. How's that going? Hard. We're working through why I'm so vulnerable to manipulation. She smiled slightly. Turns out Derek did more damage than I realized. Are you okay? Not yet, but I'm getting there. She looked at the headstone. I'm still angry at myself for being so blind, for losing Sarah's money. I didn't argue. She needed to process it. I saw Derek last week, she said suddenly. At a restaurant with his new wife, looking smug. I wanted to throw my drink in his face. She paused. But I didn't. I just walked out. We stood there as the afternoon sun warmed our faces. I'm thinking about going back to school, Margaret said, getting my master's in psychology. Maybe I can help other women like me. You'd be good at that. Maybe something good can come from this. We walked back to the car. Margaret had moved back into the house. Her house now, since I'd signed over my half. She'd needed the security. My phone buzzed. Diane, coffee tomorrow? I looked at Margaret's lit house through the window as we pulled up. She was standing. She was here. Yeah, I texted back. Tomorrow. Some wounds don't close clean. Margaret still flinches when someone mentions life coaching. I still check my phone obsessively, making sure she's okay. But we're here. We're standing. And some days, that's enough. Diane says Sarah would be proud. I hope she's right.